Well, hello everyone. Matt Rowe here with the Zwift Power Up Cycling Podcast. This is a World special, the first in a series of 5 Yorkshire World Champ special episodes covering all things 2019 Yorkshire Road World Champs. Now it's a British hosted World Champs in Harrogate in Yorkshire, so we have a couple of Brits to host these special podcasts. So joined by another Matt, familiar voice and Zwifter, Mr. Matt Stevens.
Yeah, thanks guys. Good to join you, Matt and Dani. I think this is my first appearance on this, although this is a special edition. I've never been on the Power Up podcast before. Thank you very much for having me along. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I think we've been, as soon as it was announced that Yorkshire had got the World Championships, there's such a good feeling, wasn't there, especially amongst everybody in British cycling. It's going to be amazing. I've ridden the circuit a few times. I've been up. I haven't been up over the last few weeks, but I understand that the atmosphere was already building there. It's going to be great. I think whatever the weather throws at us, I think Yorkshire is going to make this a World Championships to remember. So I am super, super excited to be up there with you guys.
Yeah, likewise. I think, it's not very often you get to experience a home World Champs, is there? So it's probably once in a lifetime for most people. So going to be pretty special. But yeah, got another row, as you mentioned, Matt. We've got my wife, Dani, joining us as well.
Hello. Really, really cool to be here. Just echoing Matt, it's going to be so exciting to be up there in Yorkshire, in Harrogate for a home World Championships. I can't wait. It's going to be great.
So this is a special series of podcasts. So, Kev, Greg and Kristen will be back at some point. But for the Worlds, we're going to be in Yorkshire. I mean, Kev's going to be there as well. Just, catching up on all things Worlds related, touching base on the events of that day, and grabbing a couple of cool, interesting guests. So we've each had different involvements in the Worlds, thinking about it, haven't we? I mean, I was looking at your involvement, Matt, the World Amateur Champs back in 1995.
Yeah, I've got to really kind of dig through my mental filing cabinet there, Matt, because it's a long time ago.
Yes.
I dread to think how old you were then, mate, but I was 25, and it was the Worlds in Colombia, down near Bogota, and it was when we used to have the track Worlds and the road Worlds together. Do you remember those days? So I was in the team. I was in the road team, and the track team involved Graham O'Brien. I think Graham actually went on to win the pursuit title that year. So you can tell how long ago it was. It was one of the biggest investments in a World in many years, because for the following year, obviously Atlanta was 1996, so 1995 meant that it was particularly important that the road qualified. Well, the road actually qualified everybody. So there was a very strict criteria. We had to finish one rider, I think, in the top 20 countries. And anyway, to cut a long story short, we had 2 weeks at altitude in Colorado. Then we went up to Colombia, which we were racing at like nearly 3,000 meters. So it was proper altitude. And I managed to pull off a pretty decent ride, managed to finish 8th, although I was upgraded to 7th.
Nice.
Somebody got busted. The guy that got 3rd was busted later, so I moved up to 7th. But essentially, and nobody else finished the race. I was the only finisher. So if I hadn't finished, we wouldn't have had any road riders at the Atlanta Olympics. So it was quite critical. So yeah, it was a good ride, a wonderful ride. It was an amazing. I mean, it's a complete another kind of podcast, the whole story around it, because we were there for a month really. But no, that was one of my kind of rides of my career, and it got me Ride of the Year at the British Cycling Dinner, the Val Waterhouse Trophy. But it was good, mate. Fun memories of the World Championships.
What about, Matt, the amateur? Okay, it's got the word amateur in there. What's that all about? Or is it just a word thrown in, but it is still the same champs we know today? Yeah,
it's basically the same as we know today. But I'm trying to think when the last amateur championships was. I think it might have been that one actually. But what it was the equivalent of the under-23 championships. We still had the pros, so the Pro World Men's Championships was won by Abraham Alano in front of Pantani, in front of Indurain. They were the pros that were riding it. But back then, amateur was basically anybody who wasn't a pro that could have previously been a pro under 23 or over 23. So what the UCI did, I think it was in 96 or 97. Actually, I think it was 96. They overhauled it, and so the amateur class became under 23 only. So if you were over 23 and you weren't a pro, you couldn't ride. So it was kind of, weirdly, the amateur champs was, I don't know, a little bit harder maybe than the under 23 champs, because the guy that won it when I won was an ex-pro called Dani who now works for Eurosport. So it was Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore, but essentially it's been rebranded the Under-23 Worlds. But you could be older because I was 25. So that just to clear that up.
Got it. And you just mentioned briefly then about the days when the track and the road were together. And I guess, that's my very, very brief involvement in any sort of world champs as a rider was the junior worlds, and kind of went as a track rider and then got kind of chucked into the road race. And this was 2005.
Right.
And obviously the sport, it's come on so much now. I mean, now you've got, the junior ranks in Britain have got, a road squad and a track squad, and they're both very, very specialist. But back then, for a number of reasons, I guess budget was a big part. It was kind of the track riders got thrown into the road race, and sure enough, in the road race, got my ass handed to me. I think I got a couple of better results on the track, but dropped into the road race in 2005. But Dan, you've obviously the Worlds. It's not a new thing to you.
No. So as you mentioned, I've ridden 4 track worlds and 2 road world championships. So I rode in Qatar in 2017, and then last year in Innsbruck, which is actually my last ever professional cycling race. So that's when I decided to retire from professional sport. And yeah, it's just such a prestigious event. Everyone's focusing on the World Championships. It's all anyone wants to be selected for in their nation. It's just the pinnacle of the end of the racing season. So yeah, to be in Yorkshire and Harrogate, it's going to be so special. I rode the Tour of Yorkshire, which went over the major climb in the women's road race circuit, Lofthouse, and it's going to be absolutely fantastic. Yorkshire is one of the cycling hubs of the UK, if not the cycling hub. Everyone is so passionate about bike riding, and as you said, Matt, everyone's obviously getting behind it and hyping it up already. And I'm sure it's just going to be such a spectacle and great for the sport and great for the country.
No, I definitely think you're right, Dani. I think it's funnily enough, when we talk about all our various involvement in the World Championships, I commentated on you riding the World Championships. How's that? So that's quite another interesting little angle there.
I hope you said good things, Matt. I hope you were nice.
I know.
Well, you could probably dig the recording up on YouTube, but I think I was reasonably complimentary, Dani, so don't worry about that.
Thanks.
But no, yeah, I think I've commentated on the Worlds maybe 4 or 5 times now, and I've ridden 4 amateur worlds and 2 pro worlds. So there's like 6. I know, nearly 10 times I've been involved in the Worlds, I think, now. So it's really, and last year for the first time I was involved with Zwift. So it's nice. I think all of us bring a different kind of insight, don't we? I've never ridden the track worlds, but I've watched Graham O'Brien warm up for the track worlds. I mean, does that count as being on the track? Maybe.
Claim it. Have you been in a velodrome?
I have been in a velodrome.
There you go. That's velodrome experience right there. The road world champs, or world champs in cycling, arguably one of the most prestigious cycling events you can win. I mean, in sport, I guess it's the Olympics, but in cycling, having that jersey for a year, maybe it's kind of on par.
Yeah, I think, Dani maybe is more qualified to kind of talk about the rainbow bands and the gold medal, but I think you're quite right. I think for the general public, the Olympics, I think, carries more prestige because it's more, everybody knows about the Olympics and not necessarily everybody knows about the World Championships. But within the world of cycling, I think the rainbow bands almost carry the same amount, equal prestige or not far off the Olympics. I mean, it depends on how you look at it, especially the fact that it can be won every year as well. So, I mean, I think, Dani, you've had the rainbow bands on the track. I mean, and a gold medal, putting me and Matt to shame, really. But I think you're right, Matt. I think there's a different perspective. But inside cycling, I mean, the rainbow bands are really, they're something very, very special, aren't they, Dani?
Yeah, they are. And like you said, I think it's quite unique actually to the sport that the World Championships are on the same kind of pedestal as the Olympics, especially on the road. I think even more so than the track, actually. I think for me, the Olympics was the pinnacle on the track, but for the road, it's just those rainbow bands hold such prestige. And I think maybe even different for men and women. I think potentially on the women's side, the Olympics have got a bit more potential value to them, but maybe it's the history. The men, for the men, they're going to be absolutely guaranteed, that world tour contract if they're a world champion. The women, there's a lot more hype around the Olympics in terms of sponsorship and things like that. So again, that's another kind of podcast in itself. But like you say, I think the rainbow bands are, one that every bike rider dreams of, especially on the road.
No doubt. And talking of the rainbow bands, there's going to be 11 World Championship events being fought for. We've got 6 time trial events, including the mixed team time trial.
So it's one lap each of a 14-kilometre lap. So 3 male riders, 3 female riders. The men set off first, and then the women will replace them on the road as soon as the second male rider has crossed the line. And then the final times will then be taken when the second female rider crosses the finish line, and then the fastest team will be declared the winner.
Wow, world champion.
I think it's because we had it for the first time, didn't we, at the European Championships this year? So the event has been done, but never at the Worlds before. So I think it's a great idea. It's going to be very interesting to see how it pans out. But I've noticed that it's been taken very seriously by some nations. I mean, because it is quite a new event. I noticed that Primoz Roglic is actually going to ride the relay for Slovenia. So that just shows how much they care about this new event. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, they've got the 5 road races then alongside, but not to forget, there are actually 2 paracycling events. They're not World Championship title events, but they are kind of world standard events. So we're going to have able body and paracycling world standard riders dotted all over Harrogate, which is going to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So let's just touch briefly on our favourites for the Worlds. I guess let's focus on the elite men's and women's time trials and road races. I mean, I know speaking to Kristen Armstrong that Chloe Dygert is up for it is probably an understatement for the women's time trial. Kristen, being her coach, has been laser focused with her on targeting the time trial, and what a team there. You've got a world-class rider, world-class coach. I think Chloe certainly has to be in the mix for a podium somewhere. Yeah,
I mean, she is a bit of a phenomenon, really, isn't she? Without a shadow of a doubt, she can seem to do it all. I know she just won over in Colorado, didn't she, at upper altitude, which is no surprise. That's where she comes from. But when you think about the experience that Kristen Armstrong can bring across as well in terms of a coach, you say laser focused. She's laser focused already, so she's going to be super, super laser focused, isn't she?
Yeah, exactly. Double lasers.
Yeah. I'm really, really excited to see Chloe race. I actually commentated on the Tour of Colorado, and she won 4 out of the 4 stages. So I think she's actually the biggest dark horse in the time trial for the women. I think you have to say that Annemiek van Vleuten is the out-and-out favourite. She won the time trial by 30 seconds in last year's World Championships, and she's just been so dominant this year. But I do think Chloe will be the dark horse and potentially catch those riders by surprise. I think she's very likely to be able to podium on this course. It's 32.5 kilometers, 14k of flat, and then 3 kind of climbs, with the final climb drag up to Harrogate. So I think we're in for a really exciting time trial this year. The Dutch were really dominant last year with the top 3 spots taken. But yeah, I'd like to back Chloe. I'd love to see her win and take over the Dutch dominance that we've seen for the past few years.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because a rider of that standard, primarily focused on the track, but based in America, we don't really see or hear much of her in Europe. So definitely a dark horse, and again, same chance of the podium. I'm gonna put my neck on the line and back Chloe for the win. And I know she's been using Zwift a great deal to train as well. And talking of Zwift, on the men's time trial side, Coach Kev Poulton has been working with Alex Dowsett. So I think it'd be amazing to see Dowsett do well. I know Alex is kind of targeting a medal. I think that'll be great to see after his extensive training using Zwift. There's a couple of videos out there that he's posted and shared, which are pretty cool and interesting to see. How Zwift has generally been used as a training tool for the Worlds in Yorkshire.
Yeah, I know. I've actually watched a couple of those videos from Alex. It is very interesting, and he's a big proponent of training for the road on Zwift as well. I mean, he does spend a lot of time on it. but there are more and more pros using it. But no, especially to give you now the Yorkshire course has been released as well, to get a sense of what the course is like, because obviously the TTs are just around the finishing circuit, aren't they? So unless you've actually been out there, for a lot of the foreign teams, to actually drop in on Zwift is such a bonus. And I remember speaking to the Dutch squad last year in Innsbruck, and they had their under-23 men's and women's and the junior teams all riding on Zwift virtually to get a sense of what the course was like. So it just shows, I mean, Zwift's a lot of fun, but now it's being used as an important training tool as well ahead of World Championships, which is fascinating. But no, I agree. I think for Alex in particular, a medal, I mean, the men's field is stacked as well. I think it's going to be, if Alex does medal, I think he'd be pretty happy. But it's a once-in-a-career opportunity, isn't it, to try and win a medal on home soil as well for Alex, although he's an Essex lad. I think Yorkshire will adopt him if he gets a medal.
Yeah, for sure. And just going back to the use of Zwift for the Worlds, I did it for the first time in Innsbruck last year. And it was really, really interesting for me because I was training on it day in, day out, doing my efforts on the significant climb of the course of last year. We didn't have the chance to go out and suss out the course beforehand. And you only get kind of one day or a few hours in the day where the roads are closed that you can go and see the course. And I was kind of saying to the riders as we were going, right, we're going to take a left-hander here, it's going to kick up. And they couldn't believe it. And I actually couldn't believe it, in terms of how accurate it actually was. And it is so beneficial because if you've kind of got that, mental preparation that you know what's coming, even before you get this one chance and one chance only to see the course, which is really hard to take it in when you've only got that one opportunity. And also with training, you don't want to be, hacking around the course a couple of days out before the World Championships. And it's just such an incredible tool. But then, again, going back to Alex Dowsett, I think a podium would be absolutely incredible. And it'll be really interesting to see how he goes. We've also got Geraint Thomas in for the men as well. And I actually found out yesterday, it's quite interesting, that the top 10 from the Worlds guarantee 2 spots for the Olympics next year. So I think that's a big motivator for Geraint riding at the World Championships, and potentially more of a focus being on the time trial this year to guarantee those spots in Tokyo next year.
Indeed.
That's a very interesting point, isn't it? But before we move on to the road race, just thinking about Rowe and Dennis, he's got to be in with a shout for the men's time trial, having won it last year. But obviously he hasn't raced since pulling out of the Tour back in July. How do you think that'll impact him, not having any race experience for the last couple of months?
Yeah, he's backed up with Luke Durbridge, who's the current TT champion of Australia, isn't he, in the Aussie squad? But I think it's a little bit of an unknown. I actually have spoken to Rowan since he left the Tour, and there's a lot going on in relation to what he's actually doing. It was obviously quite difficult for him to kind of leave under those kind of circumstances. But one thing you can say about Rowan is his kind of, once he's focused on something, he's very, very dangerous. I mean, he is again, use the word laser focused. Once he gets his mindset on something, he's pretty unshakable. But I think but saying that, it's completely unknown. We don't know what his levels are. We don't know how. I don't think he'd actually turn up at the Worlds unless he thought he could win it, especially off the back of no competition. But I've no doubt he's been training very, very hard, and defending this title I know means a hell of a lot to him. And he's going to want to salvage something from this season as well. But I think the only concern is, we don't know his form. And having not competed against the clock for real, you need to do that, as we all know. You do need that to get in the zone of being in competition. And I think that's the only thing that may hold him back slightly. But I still know that he's very, very hungry to try and win this one. Yeah,
completely agree. And I think, road racing, trying to compete at 150 or 285 kilometer road race like the men's and women's, trying to do that off the back of only training and no racing, I'd argue it's kind of near on impossible. Time trialing, you can get that kind of race experience in training almost. Just doing local club events. I think the training is a lot more measured and calculated, that you can kind of train for it a little bit better. So I think Rowan's going to be going to be in the mix somewhere. I completely agree with your view. He's only going to rock up if he believes he can win.
My cheeky outside bet, and it's a bit of a predictable one. I think that Remco Evenepoel, the young sensation from Belgium, could spring a surprise.
Yeah.
He's already sprung a surprise by winning the Europeans, and when you think about the fact he's only like 62 kilos and he won on a flat course, you guys know the maths. That's an amazing amount of power for a light guy, and this course will suit him down to the ground if he can stay fresh. But he's my outside tip to upset the favourites.
Nice. I think, as Greg would say, he is a weapon.
He is a weapon. He's a little weapon.
He is a weapon.
He's a pocket weapon.
Road races then. Women's road races. What do you reckon there, Dani?
Well, I'm very excited. But you have to say that Marianne Vos is the out-and-out favourite. As much as I'd love to say that Lizzie is, there's no beating her at the moment. She's just finished the Tour of Ardèche, and she won 4 out of the 6 stages. She won 3 out of 4 stages of Norway, and she won La Course, which I actually think, looking at the profile of La Course, it was very up and down, and the finish was very similar, kind of a almost 90-degree bend into a slight drag up to the last couple of 100 meters. And I feel like it's absolutely made for her, and she's in the form of her life. So I think you have to say Vos is a favourite, although it's really interesting at a World Championships to see how the Dutch are going to ride, because pretty much all of their team can win. And I think that's actually their biggest problem, because everyone wants to win. So it'll be interesting to see how they ride if they do just go in with one plan and one plan only. But sometimes what happens in a World Championships is they're just counter-attacking each other, and it's almost the luck of the draw for whichever one then kind of stays away with whatever composition then that the bunch are happy with. But yeah, I think she's got to be the favourite. But then we can't not talk about Lizzie Deignan, who said a year ago when she gave birth to her daughter that was her mission. She wanted to win the World Championships road race on her home roads in Harrogate 1 year after giving birth. So that would be such an incredible story. I know that, she knows these roads like the back of her hand. The course has been, designed for her, and she would have done absolutely everything this season to be in top form come Saturday, the 27th.
I think you're right. I mean, there's no doubt about, that the Dutch have a problem in terms of almost too much talent. I think we can't rule out Marta Bastianelli either, the European champion. She's become exceptionally dangerous. She's got such a good kick on her. But I think Vos, just the way that Vos won La Course, I think that the way she's able to accelerate at the moment is something to behold. I was there when she won that race, and to watch how far she came back from. She can almost do what she wants. But I think a hungry, a focused, and a relatively fresh Lizzie Deignan could do it. And I had a dream. I did put it on Twitter. I had a dream the other day that Lizzie Deignan won wearing a Stetson hat from the United States. And I was worried that she was losing aerodynamic gains on the run into that, but she still won. So with that in mind, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you're like a mystic Matt.
I agree with Bastianelli. She was obviously so dominant in the classics, and it is quite a classics type course. It's 150 kilometers. They've got 2 major climbs, but they come quite early, and I think it'll be super attritional. You'll have the climbers, wanting to make it super hard from the start. I think it's going to be aggressive from the word go. You're going to have those riders that want to get in an early break to get over the climbs before, it all splits up on that major climb. And then, you're going to have the teams that don't have the sprinters trying to get rid of the sprinters. I think it's just going to be relentless from start to finish, which I think will actually suit Lizzie, but also suit, the Dutch and the likes of Marianne Vos. And Bastianelli, again, she showed that she can climb as well. So I'm really, really excited.
Yeah.
Should be cool.
I think it's going to be a lot of those kind of normal favourites, the normal names you expect to see at World Championships for the women. And same for the men. I mean, the whole of the Belgium men's squad, Van der Poel, Greg Van Avermaet, Michael Matthews, dare I say it, Sagan. You can never ever rule that bloke out. It's those normal, the usual suspects. And with that finishing straight being ever so slight increase, it's a drag to the finish. it just suits those, maybe not the fast sprinters, but the powerful sprinters and kind of the one-day specialists. So those names we've just mentioned. But I think if I had to pick one rider, I think, with the form he showed at the Tour of Britain recently, I think Matthew Van Der Poel, he is probably the favourite in my mind.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's not that I can't see past Van Der Poel. I think it's just tactically he may get it wrong, but he's again very much like Vos this year. Although he's a lot younger, he can seemingly do what he wants, and he rides with this. He rides. I was speaking to Mark Cavendish the other day, and he said that I can't believe how he rides. He attacks in the jersey. He attacked early on one stage in the jersey in the Tour of Britain, didn't he? For no reason. He doesn't ride to the rules. And that's going to be quite interesting because generally speaking in a World Championship, they kind of are rules, aren't they? It's a real team-dominated event. And I'm wondering if he might just spend his matches too early on. I'm just fascinated to see how it kind of pans out. But another guy we can't not talk about either with that kind of finish, Alexander Kristoff. He's won Flanders before. It has a kind of Flandrian feel to the back end. Also Julian Alaphilippe, although he's gone off the boil slightly, I'm wondering if he's gone off the boil on purpose. Is he just holding back? He rode okay in Montreal and Quebec. It wasn't sort of super good. He has to be one of the favourites. And then our very own Ben Swift as well. We can't not mention Ben. He's been up there in the Worlds before. And I know the team are built around Ben. So I think the course gives us it's going to be an open race, that is for sure. But I think you're right, Matt. The classic specialists are going to come to the fore, aren't they?
Yeah, they're definitely. You mentioned Swifty. I mean, we're gonna chat to Swifty for the podcast. As the nation's hopes in the men's road race are on his shoulders. But he's one of the fan favourites in Britain. We all love Swifty. So, and he's going to fight to the death and give it his all. So that's going to be quite exciting to see. But just moving on and thinking of the course. We've got it on Zwift, the Harrogate finishing circuit. I think I would kind of summarise it as being lumpy. If you rode it as a one-off, it's rolling, but tagged on to the back of a World Road Race Champs. It's going to be leg sapping, lung busting, especially if it's ridden aggressively, which no doubt it will be. And looking at the run in to the finishing circuit, especially for the men's. I know you've ridden the women's side, Dan, but the men's, that is super tough. And I think that could be an opportunity for some of the nations. We haven't mentioned any Spanish riders, for example. For the Spaniards, they've really got to try and light it up a bit earlier. So will the Spanish be on the gas on the run in to the finishing circuit to try and animate the race and try and just fatigue some of those sprinting nations and the sprinters riders?
Yeah, I think they have to. Also the Colombians as well. They have to make it so hard because they can't take any of the sprinters to the line. I think what will be really interesting as well is it's going to be such a fight for position. I've ridden the run into the course and the final laps. I know the men have got 7 laps to the finish, the women have got 2. But even so, I think if there is a bigger group coming into the finish, it will just be carnage. I think it's going to be, like your classics, like your one-day races where you're fighting, to be in that top 10, top 20 position coming into the laps. Because, if you're 50 or more back, it's almost game over because it's so twisty, it's up and down. So, position is going to be everything. So the World Tour riders are going to have that advantage with positioning. And then also the weather. We haven't really spoken about the weather, but it's Yorkshire, so it could be anything. It could be 30 degrees in sunshine or 10 degrees in rain. I think that will suit certain riders over others. It'll become a massive mental game. I think there's so much that could happen in this race. It's like you said, it's quite open, and there's so many different things that could have a bearing on how this race is going to pan out for both the men's and the women's.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I've ridden the finishing circuit a few times now. And again, when I was over at the World Tour, I was chatting to Ian Stannard because he's one of the stalwarts of the British team. He said it's up and down, as you said, Matt. It's lumpy, but it's not going to suit the heavier guys quite as much because you don't carry a lot of speed into some of the small climbs as well. There's this long drag, then you drop down, you turn right at the top of the back end of the circuit, you drop down, quite a technical descent. And in the wet, that's going to be very interesting. You're going to have the real concertina effect, but you do have to shave a fair bit of speed off before you kick up this like 1 in 10. It's only a short climb. That's going to really diminish, I think, the zip from a lot of the sprinters' legs. And then you've got the other climb around the back of the circuit. And as you said, Dani, the last kind of 2K before the finish line, super, super complex, loads of twists and turns. It's going to be lined out. That part of the circuit especially is not going to be just hard. It's going to be stressful as well. We know the Worlds is always a very stressful event, but I agree, certain nations are going to have to put the pressure on earlier on in the race to try and whittle down the field or at least take some of the sting out of the rider's legs. So I think we're in for just a super exciting, difficult race.
To bring those last couple of comments there, you're speaking about positioning and those, not carrying much speed into the climb. So bringing that home for some of you listeners, if you're not well positioned, you're towards the back and you go around a tight bend where you lose all your speed. The front riders may go around that bend at 20 mile an hour and kind of carry a little bit of momentum, a little bit of speed. But the riders, 100 riders back, are going to be almost at a standstill going around that bend. So out of that bend, then you've got to accelerate up the speed. You're going to be pumping out over 1,000 watts. So again, every extra kilogram that these riders are carrying is going to make a difference. So as we all know, it's Zwift terminology, isn't it? What's per kilo? It is going to be, it's fundamental. The bigger riders, as you said, it's going to be a tough old race for those guys.
Certainly is.
And as Hendy always said, having ridden the World God knows how many times, the World is just a different race. Teams and nations can get things wrong.
I've ridden it myself. So I rode, a couple of seasons in the World Tour women's race, and the World's was completely different because you've just got such a different composition of riders. So, for example, on the women's side, the Dutch are so dominant, but there's only 6-7 of them, depending on how many places they get in the World Championships. Whereas in the World Tour, half the peloton's almost made up of these incredible Dutch riders. So it is very, very different. And then again, like you said, Matt, it's how they then work as a team because they're not used to riding as a team together, whether they've had the chance to come together to ride, do training camps together, suss out how they ride each individual. That takes practice to learn different riding styles, what the different leaders want and require from their, I guess, domestiques, which was what I was in the World Championships for Lizzie. I think that's another kind of element to add into the mix at a World Championships. And then also, on the road, you need a bit of luck on your side as well because so much can happen. Kind of
in turn, I think the kind of higher quality in depth the team you have, the more problems it can give you. I think that the Dutch women's team is a great example because all those they've got several previous world champions in that squad, riders that are capable of winning, and they're going to be wanting to win themselves as well. I think what we quite often see externally is like, we think the team are all pulling together, but let's be honest with you. There's only one rainbow jersey, isn't there? And if there's an opportunity, we quite often see internal kind of struggles. I'm not suggesting by any stretch that's going to happen with the Dutch, but it's a problem that the team management are going to have to manage because they have to ride. They have to have a plan, and it means that 1 or 2 riders are going to have to sacrifice their chances for somebody else who's on a rival team, and that's the proposition we have across the board, isn't it? I think while we're just still talking about the Women's World Championships, we can't not mention Ella Harris, can we? The Zwift Academy winner, who, of course, rides for Canyon SRAM, has been picked to ride for New Zealand. That's absolutely fantastic, and it's a first as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and what an opportunity for her. She's entered the Zwift Academy. She's got through, that grueling process that you were very much involved with, Matt. At 21 years old, she's had a really, really good season. I think the past couple of years you've seen, riders struggle to adapt to the World Tour peloton straight away. But she's done so well, especially as a young rider. She's just finished the Tour of Colorado, 4th overall on GC. She had a fantastic race. I watched her. She raced really, really well. But yeah, to make the New Zealand team then for the first time at 21 years old off the back of being a Zwift Academy winners, just fantastic. So I'm sure she's profited off, the course, a big Zwifter herself, and used that in preparation. But it'll be really nice to see her out there on the World's course. And a big moment for her, first World Championships.
Yeah, absolutely. So fantastic about Ella and all that, and just that untapped talent. No, she would not have been found if it wasn't for Zwift Academy. So, chapeau there to Zwift for making that happen. Obviously, Kev being her coach. But just one thing we talked about just before that was that kind of conflict within teams, And I think, sometimes it's a question of how motivated are you to support your national team leader. Riders may have stronger loyalties potentially in other nations, but also I think that's even more true in the younger ranks. So as a junior and under 23, your last year under 23, you potentially got one shot now to kind of secure your pro contract, and there's going to be you got a decision there, haven't you? Do you work for yourself and try chance a result, get a top 10 or whatever it may be, and might help with your career, or do you follow instructions and ride for your team leader? And we all know what the textbook answer is, but these are humans out there, and it's a tough world. And as you said, Matt, your comment was bang on. There's one rainbow jersey on the line. So it's always fascinating to see how these major championships are played out. But just to wrap it up then, guys, we're going to be obviously based at the Zwift Draft House in Harrogate. That's going to be the place to be, isn't it? I mean, drink, coffees, bit of cake, few beers, plenty going on in the evenings. I think, well, Matt, you're hosting the activities.
Yeah, we've got, I don't have them to hand, but we do have a list. We've got events every single night running through, starting on Sunday night. And we have events all the way through this Zwift. And towards the back end of the week, after the junior races and after the under 23 races, we're going to have some of the under 23 and junior riders coming into Zwift to race on Zwift after their race. So, and we hopefully, that's going to be great. So I'll be hosting some of those, pretty much all of those events. So I'm looking forward to get to seeing people on Zwift, but also primarily it's just kind of, we've got a place where people can come and hang out and just enjoy the atmosphere of the World Championships. We're only about 100 meters from the actual course itself, so on race day you can wander, have a coffee, have a beer, whatever, sit around with like-minded people, and then wander out, watch the race, and come back and watch it on the big screen. So it is going to be the place to go to, and I'm looking forward to hanging out there as well with everybody else, and maybe going out on my bike in the mornings, because there's hosted rides every morning as well.
Definitely be doing that. Definitely be getting some bike riding in the morning, and that's going to be the home of the podcast. So we'll be recording another 4 episodes: Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So yeah, tune in and keep an ear out for those podcasts over the next week or so. But guys, good to chat, and see you both in Harrogate.
Nice one. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Dani.
Can't wait. Thanks, guys.